Hey guys, so today I want to talk about sport and enjoyment and different modes of sport. So I recently had an injury and I had surgery for that on Tuesday, so I've been a little bit out of action lately. That happened during mixed martial arts, which I think's for me one of the most enjoyable sports to do. I'll get into explaining that later. Now, sports are a great thing because they allow us to be in our body and completing objectives physically, which is something that humanity is actually wired to do. If you go back to thinking hunter gatherer sort of times, we would have achieved all our dopamine essentially from doing physical things together. Um, you see this interplay. All all cultures across the world enjoy partaking in physical activities together. I mean, one unifying thing that occurs everywhere is dancing to music. Um, and I think sport in the modern context is an extension of that, embracing movement within the body. I think there's a great amount of claritas that comes when one is in the state of motion. It's completely different to when you are idle. When you are idle, you have more of a capacity to think, yet we do not always want to be thinking in this life. The thoughts can sometimes be a bit of a curse. But with sports, we can break them down into a few different types. So, one thing we love is getting an object inside the hole. Get it in the hole, okay? You can think about what that could be analogous to. This is most sports, right? Basketball, get it in the hoop. Golf, even though it's a different type of sport, it's not as physically strenuous, you're still getting it in the hole. Dart, you're aiming for a specific target. You play soccer, you're getting the ball object in the hole. Goal. Water polo, hockey. Just keep naming them. Most sports, especially team sports, involve collaboration amongst the participants in a structured manner to achieve the goal of getting object into the hole. And then this is how we score points. And it might not necessarily be a hole like NFL or rugby. It could be between a post or in a zone like NFL or rugby. You score in the zone, but it's still getting object into an area. Now, this is a majority of sports, team sport in particular. I can't really think of team sports where that is not a objective. Perhaps something like volleyball, it's not quite getting the object within a hole, but I guess you are trying to land it on the ground within a perimeter. I'm not sure. So they're the team-based games, and the reason people gravitate towards them, obviously soccer, um, being the most popular sport in the world, is due to a large group of people being able to participate at the same time, b the low degree of funds required to be able to participate in the sport. All you need is a ball, space, and then to create some type of goal through which you can identify when a point is scored. And you play this game with your feet. You run around kicking the ball. You don't have to worry about being taken down and so much as what the floor is made out of, which is more of a factor when you're participating in sports such as contact sports. Now, we have these objective based sports, and then we have our metric-based sports such as track and field, swimming, sports where there is no way of having onus on the outcome. There's no referee. It's purely based on your capacity to complete a singular skill. And the time frame or distance, so like long jump or something, is determined purely on your capacity. Yes, there are some like rules about starting points, or say you're in a relay race, you've got other people and you have to change a baton between certain segments, but the capacity for you to complete a skill is the determining factor, and the speed at which you can do it, or the strength you can generate to like throw a shot put, and it's a very objective sport. We see these, and these are sports where the activities are really a determinant of a specific capacity. It's like weightlifting as well. Just purely how much weight can you move in a very strict, limited movement, and you beat your opponent without actually having to receive any force or exertion from them. Whilst you may be able to visibly see them doing something, the whole onus is on purely your ability to complete the movement and how well you can do that given your body. Now, we do also see a degree of this in sports that have rating-based systems, such as diving or gymnastics. However, with them, there's this extra element of the judge. So it's not purely your capacity to do the movement. Whilst that is the main factor, there is a judging element. And as with all things human, there are biases that can occur. There are different interpretations that can be had, and this all affects the outcome. I was just interrupted. But what I was saying is that we have these sports that I don't particularly like for myself, because I don't like having someone else necessarily be the judge. I think the more you can limit that, the better it is for me in terms of enjoyment. And then the last sort of type of sport we have is combat, which is really interesting because the combat-based sports are sports where your ability to dominate the other person within the given rule set is the only determining factor. And there's a direct correlation between skill output over the other person and the outcome of the game. There is no object that you are playing. The object is your ability to move within space, and then as a result manipulate the other person's body, whatever the given rule set is. And I think this is like the purest sort of sport in terms of bettering the other person. Whilst of course there's systems of scoring within wrestling, judo, jiu-jitsu, even MMA. There's elements of scoring, and they can limit the control that you have within a time frame. However, there are often elements of the sport which create some degree of finality. That's why I love jiu-jitsu the most because there is the submission element, and the submission is the cessation of the match. When there is a submission, if you were in an actual fighting context, it's the end because the person could no longer function if you were to complete that submission. They tap. So I'm choking them. They tap because it's a sport. I let go. But if it's an actual fight, you choke them until they're unconscious, and then that's the end. And it's really interesting for me that just your ability to manipulate yourself in a way such that the other person cannot continue within the given rule set. Obviously, the simplest way to understand this is in a striking match that the person is knocked out. Like, I think it's very universal and simple to understand. And we see these martial arts type wrestling sports across all sorts of cultures, all across the world, and it's due to the simplicity of them. It is man, woman, participant, v participant, and it's purely besting the other person. There's no excuse to be made for really. You can have dodgy reffing, but there's not much of an excuse to be made in regard to refereeing, and there's typically not much to be done in terms of blaming other people because it's one person against the other person, and typically the weight is done in such a way that it's evenly matched, you know. So it's really, really skill-based sport, and I think it's, for me, the most enjoyable sport that I've done. Just for context, I have done a lot of swimming when I was growing up. I got state medals for breaststroke. Was never that good at other strokes, and I participated in rugby, soccer growing up, basketball a little bit when I was younger, never too great. Water polo was fun. It's quite good at that when I was younger because I had speed, but then didn't grow too much and I lacked some skill development as I got older. And yeah, I've got to say that for me, the individual pursuit and all the small elements that you put into place in order to grow as an individual really is the most enjoyable. When there's more factors that can affect your success, so if you're playing a sport with 15 people on a field, you're relying on 15 other people performing at X capacity compared to their respective opponent to ensure that you have a desired outcome. Whereas when you are doing the individual sports, this also applies to the objective ones. It's just you and your ability. However, I prefer the dynamism of the combat-based sports due to their ability to have the reactionary forces of the opponent. This is also great how it ties into the will and the exertion of the will. You know, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, they talk about how the will is expressed in all things, and the exertion of one will over the other is a huge element of the martial arts. How much I enjoy that versus the training element, I'm not 100% sure of at this point in my life, but the capacity to dominate through exertion of that will. Yes, there is a skill element, but I think the will and the skill are intertwined with one another. And that's the great thing about these sports, especially jiu-jitsu, the gentle art, because you are able to exert and dominate in such a way that would have you would have nullified the person's options to move to a point that they are incapacitated or would be incapacitated should you complete your submission. There's great finality to it. There's a clear understanding amongst both participants of, hey, this guy bested me, and I really like the clear way that works. And you can kind of discuss about people being dirty a bit at some points, like doing various moves such as applying excessive pressure on the neck, ways people could crunch your spine and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it's a fight, and your objective is to win that fight. And they have two arms, two legs, and they're gonna be about the same weight as you. So, it's pretty much as fair as it can come as sports go. And I think that it's just great. And I've unfortunately damaged my ACL, so I will not be able to participate in that sport for a while, but I look forward to getting back to it. Let me know if you guys could think of any other sports. I'm obviously keeping this in terms of physical sports as well, like chess. And that I don't like mental based games. They're games. The physical games are different. When I say sport, I'm referring to physical sports. But yeah, I think these sports can come under those differing categories. It's about 4 of them. If anyone else can think of any other ways of defining different types of sports generally, please let me know. Anyway, have a good one.